viewers, and welcome to the Legal Talk Show. My name is Panashe Chibata Moto, but as usual, you can call me the Dynamite. And today we'll be unpacking the contents and also analyzing the Medical Services Amendment Bill so as to generate illegal information for the young people to get to know how to access their SRH services and also to gain knowledge on how to make meaningful contributions in terms of accessing their healthcare services. And joining me today are two guests who are going to introduce themselves. So starting with you, sir.
Hello viewers, my name is Victor Chirimota. I'm an SRH specialist.
Right.
Hello viewers, my name is Tarisai Nyamranga. I am a law student at the University of Zimbabwe.
All right, so I'm really excited to have you today as we unpack the contents and analyze, because young people out there need to know their rights in terms of SRH services, and they also need to know in what ways they can also actually impact the society to make changes and also change the narrative in terms of accessing their healthcare services. So tell me, what really outstands for you, the major highlights of the Medical Services Amendment Bill, starting with you, sir.
All right, so the primary issue with the Medical Services Amendment Bill, I think as it relates to adolescents, comes down to the issue of access to services, access to medical services. And I think the background of it comes from the Public Health Act, Section 35, which provides that a child below the age of 18 can only access medical services via parental consent.
Okay.
So the challenge with that now in the SRH discourse is that children, adolescents are having sex, they're sexually active, and then there are all these issues associated with having sex. So you have issues of STIs, you have issues of unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortions, you have issues around also HIV and AIDS. And the issue with that now with the Medical Services Amendment Bill comes down to a child below the age of 18 now cannot access these medical services without parental consent.
Okay.
So it raises a number of legal issues, around children without parental care. What happens? Because there are children who are childless families, like internally displaced children who also live, let's say, here in Harare, and they can't access these services. Comes down to the issue of, okay, but what happens? Because children are sexual beings, adolescents are sexual beings, they're going through maybe experimental phases, they are having sex. So what are we saying about that? Do they actually have the legal rights to access these services? Or should I, as an adolescent, go back to my mother and say, oh, mom, you know what, I have an STI, so please help me access medical services? But the truth is, who wants to do that?
All right, and that's fantastic. And as for you, Teresa, what really stands out for you in the Medical Services Amendment Bill?
I think what stands out for me in the Medical Services Amendment Bill is the fact that there's a provision that states that there should not be discrimination and medical services should be available for everyone. As mentioned by Victor, he stated that Section 35 of the Public Health Act states that a child who's below the age of 18 can only access medical services with parental guidance. And as he stated that a majority of children, of people that are under the age of 18 are experimenting, they're finding out more about their sexuality, they're finding out more about their health individually. And that just creates a barrier whereby they're not comfortable enough to go up straight and say that I am looking for, let's say, family planning or let's say condoms. They are not able to actually approach medical services and state what they want as children. And also taking it from a cultural perspective, it is a taboo in our society to actually find children talking about sex, saying that I want to engage in sexual activities. Even if they are engaging, they're not protected by the law to actually seek for medical aid or to seek for medical help. And for me, that just creates a very uneven, and to some extent, it's very discriminatory to the youth and to the younger children as a whole.
All right, and that's fantastic. So, Teresa, in other words, you're saying that sex but then, All right, Victor, and back to you. So what do you think, what is the latest state of the bill, and how do you think us as the civic organizations can come into play?
All right, so, the bill must be understood in the broader context of consent, the right to consent for adolescents. And so we've had an amendment, constitutional amendment on the age of consent to marriage, And then recently there's a case on the age of consent to sexual intercourse, and that's all both been pegged at 18. And then now with this, the third aspect of consent, which is the consent to access to SRX services, will most likely also be at 18, so that we have a universal consent law.
Yes.
Constitutionally, that makes sense.
All right.
It actually makes so much sense because if a child is anyone below the age of 18, then there should be a universal law that guarantees the rights of children. But the reality on the ground is divorced from the legal position. And that's what we need to bridge. We need to be realistic about this. And in previous conversations, I've mentioned progressive legislation in other countries. I've mentioned progressive legislation in South Africa, which says, age of consent is 16 for them, that's fine. But then the age of consent to access medical services is at 12. And it's the same with the Children's Act of Lesotho. They give this service at the age of 12. And this is a more realistic standpoint.
Exactly.
People should have access to medical services. Adolescents should be able to walk into a hospital and get free voluntary HIV testing and counseling and screening, STI screening. They should be able to access other medical services related to their right to consent to sexual intercourse. And with that, as we're moving forward, then we need a civil society to take a very realistic stance. And we need to take our advocacy beyond the hotels in Harare, because that's what we typically love doing. We love going to sit down in hotels and have coffee throughout the day, multiple lunches, and have outcome statements and everything. And we need to be intentional about it and to mobilize the adolescents that are the ones affected by this law. But the challenge is they don't even know about these things in the first place. So that gap, it will take a lot for us to bridge it, but we need to be intentional about how we go about it.
All right, and that's so amazing. I strongly believe that decisions that affect us as young people should be made by us. So how far do you think the government has engaged the young people in terms of their SRHR services?
You know what? The truth is there is some sort of acceptance of that. I think the government, in various ways, there are various platforms that young people can use, to approach the government. I think we have the ZYC. We also have even the Ministry of Youth through their various platforms and everything. I think there have been consultations around these things. Our problem is that we want young people to come and speak up about things that they don't know about. So the problem starts from access to information. Do the young people actually know, first of all, how this amendment is going to affect them in the first place? Do they know how this new law on sexual consent is going to affect them? Because if a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old are having sex, what does that mean for them? So in the absence of adequate information, child-friendly, age-appropriate, gender-sensitive information to the adolescents themselves, there is no platform that is going to be worthwhile for the engagement, because you can only engage based on what you know. So we need to first of all fix the aspect of the legal knowledge, and then from there equip them to a point where they can go and advocate by themselves.
All right. And to you, Teresa, how do you feel as a young person? Do you feel there's legal information concerning SRS services in all the youth, the younger generation? Do they have more knowledge on the legal information?
I honestly believe that I started knowing about the legal information for SRC or sexual reproductive health in adolescence when I went to university. When I was in high school, I didn't know what that was. We just learned about, we just stuck to the syllabus, and the syllabus does not permit us to go into sexual reproductive health education. And this is something I've noticed. We start getting taught at grade 6 at the age of 12. And imagine I'm being fed this information about my body, about your X and Y and Z, but then they expect me not to act upon what I've been taught. And if I act upon what I've been taught at such an early age, I do not have a law that protects me or that allows me to actually exercise my right to adequate health facilities and to actually cater for myself. So I feel like it's a very closed off topic, especially when it comes to primary and secondary education. However, in tertiary education, everyone now starts to advocate for it. Say, if you've got an STD, go and get scanned. If you've got HIV and AIDS, free scanning this, free scanning that. But then they make it seem like it's negligent to children that are under the age of 18. They make it seem like 18, 17, 16-year-olds do not engage in these things. They make it seem like teachers are not teaching children about sexual reproductive health in school. They just make it seem like it's just books and then it ends there. But then as children, we have young minds, they're growing. We want to explore, we want to see how the world around us is working. And the law does not, and this new amendment bill does not permit that, especially whereby we've got parents governing their own children. It's not just a matter of sexual reproductive health, but then we have cases whereby parents can actually refuse for a child to have blood transfusions because they are of a certain belief. And no one ever asks the child, do you want to survive? Will that blood transfusion protect you or save you? So to some extent, the law bars children from freedom of expression, freedom of saying what they mean and actually expressing and speaking their own thoughts and minds. And if we look at it from a human rights perspective, it also infringes on the right of the child or of the minor, because you cannot expect a minor to grow in the most appropriate manner if you do not allow them to grow with your protection as an adult. So I feel like the law, guided by society and culture, does not give room for adolescent children to actually be able to explore things that have to do with their sexual health rights.
All right, and thank you so much for that. Victor, back to you. Do you think this medical services amendment bill also speaks to that adolescent, that young person who is in the remote areas?
I think that's an interesting question. Again, it will come down to access to information. Do the people, the adolescents in the rural areas, do they have access to this information? Because the place where they would ideally get the sort of education will be within the school setting, within the church, because that's where people typically spend their time in. But that information is not freely and readily available. Unfortunately, the discourse on SRH in Zimbabwe, even among civil society organizations, has been limited to menstrual hygiene and menstrual health. And that is a very, very important part of SRH, but it's not all. There is more to a person beyond their menstrual cycle, and there is more to sexuality beyond just, your monthly cycle and everything. And that's a challenge that we have. The people that are going into the rural areas are not packaging relevant information. I think for me the issue is about the relevancy of the information, because sex and sexuality is part of who we are. We cannot then deny it or maybe expect a child at a certain age when they turn 18, that is when they become sexual. You know what I mean? Children are not asexual beings. They are also sexual beings who are going through sexual development as well. And the information that we are providing in rural areas should be packaged in a relevant format. The educational curriculum must become relevant beyond knowing about the head and the thorax and the abdomen, information that I don't think any of us are using right now, or by, maybe the Pythagoras theorem as well. Things that we don't daily use, but your sexual health rights, your sexuality is a part that confronts you on a day-to-day. So the educational curriculum has to be relevant, and it must speak to these issues, and packaged in a way that accommodates the child's developmental capacity at the different stages. This, if we do that, then we can easily do away with issues of sexual violence, because people then will have adequate access to information about their rights, and then they know how to report. We can do away even with the issues of HIV and AIDS. Right now we are lagging behind towards ending HIV as a pandemic by 2030. We are behind in those targets as a continent, as a country. And why is that? Because children still don't have access to relevant information. And then when they come up to say, listen, I need condoms and everything, we are the same people going to stigmatize them and hence perpetuate this cycle of poverty and HIV and AIDS. So we need to be, I think we need to be realistic, and if we are serious about ending these problems, we need to take a very realistic approach and say, where is the gap? Because we have the resources, we have the knowledge on how to address it, then let's address it.
Okay, all right, and that's so amazing, Victor. Anyway, viewers, you are watching the Legal Talk Show as we analyze the Medical Services Amendment Bill, and we still stand by the mantra that decisions that affect us as the young people should be made by us, as we unpack and also gain more knowledge on the legal matters that affect our SRHR rights. So my name is The Dynamite. Stay tuned. viewers, and welcome back to the Legal Talk Show as we give an analysis of the Medical Services Amendment Bill, and of course still with my guest as we unpack and also gain more legal information on SRHR services. So my question now is going to be on consent. I mean, that's the hottest thing in the building. What do you mean when you say that the parent has the right to make a decision in the interest of a child, to say, you know what, you can't have this, but you can have that?
I think the discourse in child rights has always been around the best interest of the child as a principle, and it's a principle that's discussed on multiple fora. But I think we have limited knowledge on on how that principle works, because I think people just think, as a parent, I just stand here and say, you are my child and this is what is best for you. We have not zoned in on the need to consult the child, because children actually have functioning brains, just in case people don't know that. And they also know, what they want, But of course, as a parent, I think, given limitations of resources and everything else, you then have to decide based on the information that you're given to say, okay, fine, given what the child has said, I'm going to consider that when I make the decision that is in the best interest of the child. It is not a dictatorial sort of role. And just say, this is what's good for you, and you're going to, go about and do this. So that's where we missed it. This is where we miss it. If a parent, when it comes to bodily autonomy, because I am a child, I'm an adolescent, I have the right to decide what is best for my body. That is my human rights. That is a human right that is very separate from you exercising your right to parental consent. The body is mine. I have bodily autonomy. It is my human right. And I must be able to exercise that human right in a way that I see and deem fit. Maybe I might consult you as a parent for you to give me guidance. Ultimately, though, the decision about my body should be left with me, the adolescent.
All right, and thank you so much for that contribution. And Teresa, my last question to you is, as a young person, as a young lady, in terms of consent, do you think it's very, proper for you, or it's very, important for you to actually ask your parent that, you know what, I need to access SRH services. Can you go with me to the hospital? I need to get a condom. I need contraception. Do you really have to take your mom and your dad with you to go to the hospital?
I honestly believe that it's a very unnecessary thing, because at the end of the day, adolescents, as Victor stated, they have brains. You have been taking them to school, feeding into those brains, making sure that those brains function. Denying that child the ability to make decisions independently then undermines the whole idea of taking that child to school, educating that child, teaching that child morals, teaching that child principles. Because you then saying that, yes, I am your parent, I should be always with you when you're going to look for an HIV test, when you're going to buy a condom, when you're going to buy morning after pills or family planning pills. It just detaches itself from the whole idea of trying to nurture adolescent children into responsible grown adults. It deprives them of the responsibility. I don't know if that makes sense, but it deprives them of their individuality. I honestly believe that when one is fully aware of their sexuality and one is fully aware of the dangers and is fully aware of the precautions to take when it comes to their sexual reproductive health, they'll be able to make wiser and more prominent decisions that can build them individually. And this barricade that is created, that parents are supposed to know everything from how you're going to go to the hospital, what you're going to be talking about in the hospital, it just removes that whole idea of individuality. It removes the whole idea of dignity, because it's undignifying going with your mother that spent 16 years beating you, telling you that you should not be having sexual intercourse, and then trying to explain to them that, no, this and this happened, I need sexual reproductive health
services. Yes. And thank you so much for joining us in the studio. That was really amazing, and there was a depth analysis on the Medical Services Amendment Bill. And yes, viewers, this is the Legal Talk Show, where we're unpacking how the legal institution in Zimbabwe has managed to provide SRHR services to the young people and its impacts on the adolescents. We are living in a world whereby right now, to talk of sexual reproductive health rights, it was a taboo normal back then, but right now that is what is happening. And it is very important for us, the young people, to make decisions for ourselves, not to have meetings whereby only the elders are discussing and we don't have access to the information. And yes, viewers, do make sure to follow us on our social media platforms, which is Say What, and also make use of our toll-free number, which is 577 for psychosocial support and health-related challenges. My name is The Dynamite, and I'm signing out.